Hey, thank you so much for joining us again today. I hope that you're really doing well. I wanted to mention that today we're starting a new series, and the new series is going to be about the things that Jesus said. The things that Jesus said. Now, the message in church last week was taken from a passage in the Gospel of John, chapter 16, verse 33. Let me read that. It says, "These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world." Now the message was that how that we could, in Jesus, that we could overcome the world. You know, the world, there's a lot of trials, and the values are different than in God's kingdom, and so that's what the message. But I was struck by the first 7 words that begin that verse. Let me read those to you again. This is what Jesus said to his disciples. He says, "These things I have spoken to you." And it just made me think about how important everything that Jesus said is. In fact, nothing that he said was unimportant. And so I know that there's been a lot of things in history and in time past, very important words that have been spoken, they've been recorded, they've been written down. Things like, you might remember the Magna Carta, which was written, I believe, written down in the 13th century, and it had to do with a charter of rights. And then we know also that in the 18th century there was a famous document, we all familiar with, the Declaration of Independence. And 19th century, we've heard, of the Gettysburg Address. So all of these are very important documents and words that have been recorded. But I just want to say this, none of these can compare to the things that Jesus said. Now then, why do I think this is so? And here's the reason that it's so. It's because that I believe that Jesus, he was God. That is to say, God walked among us in the form of man. Now, I wanted to look at a passage of scripture over in Matthew that'll probably be familiar to you. And it kind of confirms what my view of Jesus is. In fact, it says this, and this has to do with the nativity story. So it says, "So all this was done that it might be fulfilled, which was spoken by the Lord through the prophet, saying," now listen to this, "Behold, the virgin shall be with child and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel," which is translated God with us. And so, anyway, I believe that's a really important statement there, because of this. I believe that Jesus was God, and the things that he spoke were actually the things that God spoke. Now, here's another thing, because our series is going to be about the things that Jesus said. In fact, I've titled it, "What Jesus Said." Some of the things are absolutely astounding. And I wanted to read one to you, and that is found over also in the Gospel of John, chapter 7. And Jesus was saying this to, chapter 14, verse 7. And Jesus was saying this to his apostles. And here's what he said. Listen carefully. This is as an astounding statement made by Jesus. He says, "If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. And from now on, you know him and have seen him." Now, that's quite a remarkable statement made by Jesus about himself. Let me just read this again. Speaking to his apostles or his disciples, he says, "If you had known me, you would have known my Father also. And from now on, you know him and have seen him." And I found it kind of interesting, the response by one of his disciples, that was Philip. Here's what Philip said to that. Philip said to him, "Lord, show us the Father, and it is sufficient for us." It's almost like Philip wasn't listening to what Jesus said. Notice what Jesus said in response to Philip. Jesus said to him, I have been with you. Jesus said to him, "I have been with you so long, and yet have you not known me, Philip? He who has seen me has seen the Father. So how can you say, show us the Father? So these are just some of the things that Jesus said. So the words Jesus spoke, they were actually God's words. Surely the words of God are more important than the words of men. Now we know that those statements that I read and I references that men wrote, they're amazing and an important statement. But they couldn't even begin to be as important as the things that God said. So that's going to be kind of what our message is going to be. Our series is going to be about the things that Jesus said. And I have to confess to you that there are things that Jesus said that they're really difficult for me to understand. I don't understand all of them. But those are not the ones that cause me to have pause. It's the ones that I do understand that make me kind of scratch my head and wonder. So I wanted to read another passage to you that I thought was very interesting. And it was actually a statement made by the temple guards. And so the priest had sent the temple guards to arrest Jesus. And they came back and they had a response. And this is the response. I want to read it to you in just a little bit. But it says this in John 7:45 and 46. It says, "Then the officers came to the chief priests and Pharisees, who said to them," and they questioned, they kind of scolded, they were scolding these officers. And this is what they said, "Why have you not brought him?" And here's the reply that I thought was the amazing reply. The officer said, "No man ever spoke like this man." That was the reason that they gave the people that questioned why they didn't arrest Jesus and bring him to him. It was simply because no one had ever spoken like this man. And I thought it was just an incredible statement. So there's a reason why a lot of Bibles today have the words of Jesus in red. People want to know what Jesus said. Now, that doesn't mean that the words that are in black are not inspired. They're all inspired. But I think it's a good reference for all of us when we see those words that Jesus spoke in red. So in the coming weeks, we're going to be choosing some of the things that Jesus said and try to take a closer look at them. So we just want to emphasize to you how important the things that Jesus said. In fact, Jesus said, I want to read one other thing before I stop, and it's over in Matthew chapter 7. What Jesus said about the things that he spoke. And you tell me if you don't think that they're important. Here's what he said. He says, "Therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine." So that would be the things that Jesus said. So let me read it again. "Therefore, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock." That's what Jesus said himself about his own saying. So they're so important. His words are so important. That means that we can build our lives on the very things that Jesus said, and it'll be a firm foundation. And it'll be a foundation that will endure the trials of this life and the storms of this life. And it'll not only help us in this life, but it will be a sure guide for the life to come. So we're going to be in a new series talking about, you may say, did Jesus really say that? And we're going to be looking at some of those things. So we just want to say thank you so much for being with us today. I hope you have a really good week. I hope that you're safe. I hope that you're careful. I know you probably hear this too much, but I really do think it's important for us to be, careful about our distancing from people, and try to be careful about, not doing everything that we can. We certainly don't want to contract that virus. It's a horrible, horrible thing. And none of us want that to happen, so we want you to be safe. Please continue to pray. Prayer changes things. It makes a difference. Your prayers make a difference. So please remember all of those things that we've been asking you each week to pray for. I hope you have a good week. and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you for being with us.